It is fun to make a movie. If that's how your brain works and you feel you should get your friends together and make a movie and just see how that goes. It's really fun if that's what you're meant to be doing. But then it's obviously this rich history if you want to dig into that too. So I kind of like how art can work at various levels, but there's nothing obscure about the movie, but it is black and white. It's, in French with subtitles, but I remember that being super cool to me at a certain point. It's like, oh, wow. Yeah, I'm not just this hick from Texas. I like French films.
Hello and welcome to the CineManiax podcast. I'm your host, Chris Reed, editor at Film Festival Today and lead film critic at Hammer to Nail. On today's show, we'll discuss the 2025 Middleburg Film Festival, which ran October 16th through the 19th in Middleburg, Virginia. As always, it was a showcase of many of this year's potential award winners. Following the conversation, I have an interview with director Richard Linklater about one of his two films of the season, Nouvelle Vague, which also played Middleburg. Joining me is Leslie Combemale, lead contributor at the Alliance of Women Film Journalists, contributor to the MPA's The Credits, and producer of Women Rocking Hollywood. In addition, Leslie is, like me, a member of the Washington, D.C. Area Film Critics Association. It's great to have you on the show, Leslie. Thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure.
Let's have you start. What were your three faves from this year's Middleburg Film Festival?
Well, by far my favorite was Hamnet, which is writer-director Chloe Zhao's movie that is based on a novel, but has some elements of it that are from real life. And it's about William Shakespeare and his wife, who she calls Agnes in it. And Jessie Buckley is incredible. And I feel like the Oscar is hers to lose. I think she is absolutely amazing. I love the film for it being so visually stunning. The cinematographer, who's been nominated for Oscars before, does this really visually lush lighting and then just the very naturalistic kind of lots of greens. And it just feels very womb-like a lot of the time. There are motifs. They use red for her in her costuming. And I think Paul Mescal is amazing as well. It's really a meditation on grief and on the power of art, the alchemical power of art to turn pain into something beautiful and transcendent. And I loved the score by Max Richter, who I also think should be nominated for an Oscar for his score. So that's by far my favorite. And then Frankenstein, which I love Guillermo del Toro's work. I'm not always a huge fan of his work, but in this case, I mean, he himself said he was born to make the film Frankenstein, and true to his word, he was definitely born to make this film. It is like taking the 1800s Gothic novel and bringing it into 2025. It's just visually so beautiful. I mean, every single moment in the film is beautiful to look at. It's both gorgeous and gruesome because it's very violent. But the very best thing about the film is Jacob Elordi's performance. They just announced that they were going to put him in for Best Supporting Actor, not Best Actor, even though he is equally on the screen with Oscar Isaac, who plays Victor Frankenstein. I've seen the movie twice now, and I was really impacted by the beauty of his performance and the nuances of his performance, and also the way it was written, because he's kind of one with nature, and there's elements of nature that are always around him, no matter where he is, which is really beautiful. The second time I saw it, I just was like, please, everyone needs to give him the Oscar. He's just so incredible. So I really loved that film, and I think if people have the opportunity to see it on the big screen, they absolutely should, especially if they love the original Frankenstein, which has been done hundreds of times, but the original novel, or if they like Gothic kind of rich, kind of, Mia Goth, her costuming's just, perfection. So I loved that film. And then Nuremberg, which I didn't love as much, but it was a passion project by James Vanderbilt, who based it on the novel, the sort of a nonfiction thing of the Nazi and the psychiatrist. And Rami Malek plays Douglas Kelly, who all of this is true. The entire story is true. But what the director did was he took a story that is absolutely true. I think almost every aspect of it is true. And then he tried to make it entertaining. And I think that's where it kind of falls down a little bit. But there is a performance based on a real person played by Leo Woodall, Sergeant Howie Trieste, who was a Jewish German translator. And his performance is beautiful. And again, very nuanced. And then Richard E. Grant is in the film and he's wonderful. Of course, Michael Shannon and Rami Malek and Russell Crowe, who plays Herman Goring. They're all great, especially when they're one-on-one. There are scenes with Rami Malek and Russell Crowe, and their energies as actors is very different. So their energies together, it's just a very kind of abrasive, but also there's this flow to it that's really interesting. So while I think that there were tonal issues with the film in general, the performances are amazing. And I heard nothing but people coming out of there loving the movie. So even though I thought it was like tonally a little mishy and a little bit too sensationalized, I guess, I think that it had a lot to recommend it. So those are my favorites.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, Leslie. I haven't yet seen Frankenstein, but hearing you recommend it so highly definitely makes me want to see it more than before. I'm halfway through Nuremberg right now, and I definitely agree with the mixed tones, though it's also highly entertaining in places. So let's start with the first of my three. It's Nouvelle Vague from director Richard Linklater, with whom we have an interview right after this conversation. This film is an homage and a dramatization of the making of Jean-Luc Godard's Breathless that celebrates the French New Wave filmmakers who were breaking all the rules, and I highly recommend. Next up, I have Max Walker Silverman's Rebuilding, which is a film set in Colorado, starring Josh O'Connor and a wonderful young child actor, Lily Latour. It follows Josh O'Connor's character who's just lost his entire ranch due to a wildfire. It's a quiet movie that celebrates the human spirit and community, specifically community and how people come together in the face of adversity. It is very much like Max Walker Silverman's previous film, A Love Story, also a tribute to the beauty of the American Western landscape, which is clearly something that Walker Silverman loves to put on camera. And I just love the way the movie is so restrained in its emotions, which, are very high, but they're expressed in a way where the characters are struggling to say what they feel. And I always appreciate films like that. And finally, we have Japanese director Hikari's Rental Family, starring Brendan Fraser. And this is a film about an American actor in Japan who's at somewhat loose ends, struggling to find meaningful roles. And he is hired to play actual people or missing people or people that others wish they had in their families. Apparently, this is a real thing in Japan, a country where mental health therapy is stigmatized. And so sometimes it's easier for people to hire actors to play people in their families, or again, missing people from their families, rather than go to therapy. And he plays a man who gets in very quickly over his head as he impersonates a journalist. He's hired by the daughter of an aging film star to interview him, to make him feel like his life has value. And he's hired to play the missing American father of a biracial girl who needs a father in order to get into an elite private school. And of course, you can imagine how messy that can get. But it's a beautiful movie, also very quiet, also very meaningful, and also very, very funny. And I cannot recommend it more. So, Leslie, which films do you think that played at Middleburg have the best shot at awards this year?
Well, I definitely think Hamnet is one. That one, I think we'll see Best Actress, Best Supporting Actress, hopefully Best Director. I would love to see that. Hopefully Best Cinematographer, even though, as you know, I'm always the champion of female cinematographers. So I'm always looking for female cinematographers to be included in that, and production design. So I would love to see any and all of that from Hamnet. I think possibly Springsteen, that the biopic, that might see Jeremy Allen White might get nominated for Best Actor because, he sang all his own songs. And so that's usually lauded. So that one, I think, certainly Jacob Elordi, he better get nominated for Best Supporting Actor. I'd like him to win, but he better get nominated. Those are the ones I think are at the top of my list in terms of nominations.
No love for Josh O'Connor. For me, he is one of the absolutely best actors of his generation. I should note that the star of another film that played Middleburg and that I saw, Toronto, Wake Up Dead Man, the Knives Out.
Yes.
But that man, as far as I'm concerned, can do no wrong. And I would love to see him get some awards love as well.
Fair enough. He's in enough. You would think that something's going to get some attention.
That's right. He's almost overexposed, right?
Currently overexposed, but everybody loves him. So that's okay.
You know, maybe Brendan Fraser will get some love as he got for The Whale for Rental Family. We'll see. And certainly our awards group, the Washington, D.C. Area Film Critics Association, always discusses who the best child actor of the year is. And I hope that Lily Latour from Rebuilding is in that conversation. Thank you so much for being on the show and for sharing your thoughts about this year's Middleburg Film Festival, Leslie. It was great talking to you.
Well, I certainly hope that people will seek out these films. Everybody should watch as many of the ones they think might wind up as Oscar contenders, and even those that aren't, that just don't get the kind of attention they should get. So it's been my pleasure.
Next up, we have my interview with Richard Linklater, whose Nouvelle Vague I just mentioned among my Middleburg faves.
Aujourd'hui, tout le monde adore la Nouvelle Vague.
Tout ce dont on a besoin pour faire un film, c'est d'une fille et un flingue.
On n'aura jamais J.T. Burger.
I never even said that I'd do the picture.
Voici le film en résumé. Ne montre ça à personne.
Linklater has 2 movies out this fall, this one and Blue Moon, both of which examine creative artists. Nouvelle Vague is an extremely playful dramatization of the making of French New Wave auteur Jean-Luc Godard's seminal 1960s Breathless. Shot in black and white and using the classic 4:3 Academy ratio, the film is also noteworthy for being almost entirely in French, featuring mostly unknown young French actors, with American actress Zoe Deutsch the one notable exception. She plays American actress Jean Seberg, appropriating and repurposing many of Godard's techniques to recreate the mischievous atmosphere of the groundbreaking production. Nouvelle Vague is a delight both for cinephiles, especially for cinephiles, and more casual viewers. Linklater, as I mentioned before, has been around since the 1980s, with many titles to his name, among them Slacker, Dazed and Confused, the Before trilogy, School of Rock, Boyhood, and the more recent Hitman. Let's hear what he has to say about his latest. Welcome to the CineManiax podcast. I really appreciate you talking to me about Nouvelle Vague.
Yeah, great to be here.
You write in the press notes that any filmmaker who has been working for a while should, at some point in their career, make a film about the process of making a film. Seems like a fair point, but there are plenty of folks who haven't done that. You've been making films for a good long while. What did you learn about filmmaking while making Nouvelle Vague?
Every film's its own, dramatic production. You could probably make a film about the making of every film. You feel so alive and there's so much going on. But I didn't really want to make a film about my own experiences so much. It was so much more interesting to me to jump into the history of a film, and not just the film itself, but a time and place, the movement. Nouvelle Vague is so influential. It means so much to world cinema. And it's just such a confluence of great films, great filmmakers all in one place. It just hasn't really happened that way before. It's probably the closest cinema ever came to punk rock. It's a movement that was famous in its day. Cinema seems to understand itself in retrospect. It wasn't some point in the late 80s, people go, hey, the 70s was a pretty good decade. No one appreciates it while it's going on. But Nouvelle Vague was famous at that very moment and well documented, which helped when it comes time to recreate it all. We got all those photos and we had everything. So to build it out from there. But what I learned was my respect for Breathless and what Godard achieved is even more impressive and kind of more mysterious. I know more about that film than anyone deserves to. I know how many takes they did. I know what lens they used on every shot. I know everything. But yeah, how it works is still kind of something about Belmondo and Seberg. Something Godard conjured something really special. And, this genre mashup, time, place, energy, new language, modernism, it's a real modernist work. So I don't know. It's a fun film to, I'm not even saying that's my favorite Nouvelle Vague film. I'm just saying it's an interesting touchstone.
Absolutely. And I should have led with the fact that I loved your movie. I saw it at the recent Middleburg Film Festival where Zoe Deutsch was in attendance. And she mentioned in the Q&A that you don't speak French, which blew my mind. Is this true? And that must have made shooting, not to mention writing,
writing, quite the challenge. So how did you manage those challenges?
The script was very English and it translated in. The language wasn't even a barrier. It wasn't on the top 10 of my concerns. It really wasn't. I was so strangely confident in how this could work. And my French producers totally got aboard. English, for better or worse, is kind of everybody's second language. So everybody I'm working with, I can communicate. They're understanding, I like to think 85, 90% of what I'm saying. We would rehearse in English and then we would jump to French. But I'm making, in my cinematic brain, a subtitle, a black and white subtitled movie, French movie with English subtitles, that the way all these films came to me, falling in love with cinema in my early 20s. This is what these films looked and sounded like. So I'm just replicating that.
It just makes it all the more impressive to me that you did that. But almost everyone in this film is a relative unknown, though Deutsch is obviously not. You work with her in your Everybody Wants Some in 2016. Why did you want her for the role of Jean Seberg? What did you see? She said that, you approached her, you worked together before, and you had seen something in her. So what was it?
Well, she had the resemblance right here in her face around, the cheekbone, the look. I said, you could pull off Jean Seberg. I'm working. And, we were already embarking on the idea of making this film all those years ago. And I said, hey, I'm going to do this film and you're going to play Jean Seberg. How's your French? And she says, oh, I don't know any. So good. Seberg was learning French at the time. You will be doing that too. She jumped in, man. She worked so hard. She had a lot. Oh, it's kind of unbelievable what she had to do. I mean, cutting her hair and getting that look is just a little part of it. Everything else was pretty rigorous, what an actor has to go through. But she was the perfect analog to Seberg. She was a established actor coming in from the United States, dropping into a French film production where relatively all unknowns and lesser known people in a situation. But the difference was she was very comfortable, and Seberg's off-put. And why wouldn't she be? Godard won't tell her much about what the film even means or who her character is, or has no script to show her. And I think Belmondo kept things kind of fun for her, but it was an off-putting, irritating experience to whatever degree. Godard had a way of doing that to his actors, male and female, by the way.
Sure. He comes across very much as this creative, playful, but also somewhat arrogant imp, shall we say.
It's fair to laugh at Godard. I say this, out of all respect. He's a funny character. People say, why'd you do this film and not any of the others? It's like, well, he's funny, the comedic character. He's so different. He's so strange. The way his use of language, he inverts things. He always has a funny quote. I mean, he's masking God knows what insecurity and beneath all of his bravado. So it's fair to laugh either at or with him.
Yeah, and I think you do both. Guillaume Marbeck is so terrific in that part, and Aubry Dulin is so great as Belmondo. How did you find them? They're really perfect. Not only do they resemble the characters, but they're excellent actors.
Yeah, it's really, people talk about the resemblance, and that's certainly a part of it. But you're casting an actor. Everybody's different. Aubrey comes in and he had this kind of quick smile and this ease to him. A lot of young French actors, they're more serious. They love Belmondo and he's an icon. He's my favorite. It's a big gut wrenching. And I'm like, no. Then Aubrey comes in and says, yeah, I've heard the name, but I haven't ever seen Breathless. He's just kind of loose. I'm like, you are Belmondo. You are. You don't give a shit. You have this kind of cool ease to you. I say that's so Belmondo-esque. And same with Guillaume as Godard. He had this little swagger to him, even though he'd never made a film or, some guy in his late 20s. He had this kind of confidence in himself. I call it the unearned swagger and confidence of a first-time filmmaker. I recognized it. He thinks differently. He's funny in an odd way. And I was like, God, you're just quirky enough and just funny enough. Yeah, I think you are Godard, So it when you see it. You go through hundreds of people, but it's love at first sight when you do meet them. And that goes for the guy who played Truffaut, all the Melvilles and Bressons. You work through everybody. You're trying very hard to get it right.
And speaking of all those characters, you present them on screen with these short shots where they stare into the camera and their character names, not the actor names, appear beneath them as they stare at the camera. What made you land on that approach?
I was wondering as we got closer, it's like, how's anyone going to know who anybody is? You know, you don't say, hey, Claude Chabrol, what are you doing? You know, it's like, yeah, so it was just kind of a Nouvelle Vague. I'd never seen that before, where you get introduced before your first scene. It could be toward the end of the movie. You know, just staring at the camera. It seemed like a Nouvelle Vague kind of conceit. And I wanted to place them on some kind of level playing field of historical, I'll say importance, but just presence maybe, that all these people from, you know, ranges from Jean Cocteau, Jean Cocteau to Jose Benzeroff, the sleazy car dealer, ends up some kind of porn dealer. But they're all live at this place in time, and they're all in our movie for a reason. They're all swirling, breathing the same air. And so I think some of them are pretty obscure characters, somebody who wrote for Cahiers du Cinema, but at that time, they're all part of the same culture. This movie's really about the film culture of that time and the film crew. You know, it really honors the people who work on films, the assistant directors, the assistant cameraman, the set photographers, the script supervisors. I love the people who do this for a living. They're pirates, you know, they want to do this. It was a kind of a tribute to their effort.
Yeah, without them, films wouldn't get made. You know, in terms of techniques, I love how you repeat the reflection in Godard's ubiquitous sunglasses at the end. When you first use the shot, it's to show the final moment of Truffaut's The 400 Blows. And then we end with that shot of Gene Seberg in his glasses as well. So, and of course, the sunglasses are kind of his armor against the world. They're always on. So how did you decide to sort of repeat that shot through the sunglasses?
Well, not only is it two famous endings, or probably the two most famous Nouvelle Vague movies, so that it bookends the movie, Truffaut first, and then Godard with those ubiquitous shades that never came off. They were a prescription, by the way. It wasn't all show, you know. We got to play with the iconography, you know.
Absolutely. It's such a great shot. And speaking of that, you and your cinematographer, David Chamby, you do such wonderful visual work here. Did you give him specific guidelines to work with for the film?
Oh, yeah. How about this guideline? This film was made in 1959 using the materials of the day with the language of the, it was like, we're going to make this film like it was shot then. We're going to forget everything after 1959, all innovations and technologies for film. We're going to make it like it looked. And he was so up for it. He's like, Raoul Cotard is my favorite cameraman. And we were finishing each other's sentences the first meeting we had. So it was just, you know, a lot of tests, to get that look and feel. And that doesn't usually work in film, to kind of recreate that. But we were determined, and we thought it would work for this movie. And we had a really great time doing it. Really fun to study this era and try to get that right. You know, ideally, not one shot in this movie wouldn't fit into a film of that era.
Were there any specific spots in Paris where you just couldn't photograph it the way you might have wanted to because the city has changed? Fortunately, there are parts of Paris that really haven't changed all that much, but there must have been some locations where you couldn't.
For a major urban city, I would say Paris is preserved better than almost all. It's just on the first floor, on the ground level, that's going to be commercial space. You know, where there was a cafe, you know, there's now a motorcycle shop selling. That all has to be dealt with. We had to do everything they didn't have to do back then. They could just show up and shoot. They were practically a student film. No one even knew they were making a movie. Where we had to go back and replicate those locations in that time. And some we got lucky. We just used the real locations that were very much like they were then, maybe a little adjustments. But then some, say the Champs-Élysées with the, you know, New York Herald Tribune, if you go there to that exact spot, you wouldn't recognize it. But if you go 180 degrees on the other side of the arc, there's a big street heading out of Paris called the Le Grand Army. And that does look like the period piece. Oh. So, you know, you find it. It worked, but we're 180 degrees on the other side of the arc. You just make it work. The hotel is no longer where they're in there, but we built that set. That was one of the few sets we built.
What would you say to non-cinephiles? Because I obviously am a cinephile. I love the French New Wave. You didn't have to convince me to see this movie. I'm in. But what would you say to people for whom that knowledge isn't there or that initial desire isn't? Why should they come see this film? How would you pitch it to them?
It's been fun for young people who are just getting into cinema, or they don't really know Breathless or much about it. But to see their reaction and their really kind of great questions. The film works on a couple levels. On the most most simple narrative level, it's so not confusing. You know, it's a bunch of young people come together, put on a show, conflicts and things happen, and it's over. There's nothing confusing about it. A teenager has no problem getting the story. Now, there's another level if you want to get into the history and what it all means. But I remember, I'm really making this for my younger self. It's like, oh, I couldn't wait. Let's say if I was 16 years old, that there was this big adult world with references and adult themed concerns happening. I was getting there, but I didn't quite understand it, but I couldn't wait to get there. And you can really do your research and find out so much and kind of see these rich worlds that have existed, that do exist. You know, everybody's different. I think there's certain people that culture is going to be a big part of their lives, art history, and, you know, you can make a life about art. A lot of us have. And so if you're of that, it's kind of exciting to see young people create. I remember thinking that way in School of Rock. I just wanted to make it look cool to be in a band. Make music with your friends, that just looks like a worthwhile thing to do with your time. I think the same here. It's like, it is fun to make a movie. If that's how your brain works and you feel you should get your friends together and make a movie and just see how that goes. It's really fun if that's what you're meant to be doing. But then it's obviously this rich history if you want to dig into that too. So I kind of like how art can work at various levels, but there's nothing obscure about the movie. It is black and white. It's French with subtitles, but I remember that being super cool to me at a certain point. It's like, oh, wow. Yeah, I'm not just this hick from Texas. I like French film.
Well, I love the film, and I'll certainly be showing it at some point to my students. Thank you so much for talking to me on CineManiac. Maybe I'll see you in Austin, Texas for South by Southwest.
Yeah, always fun. So,
all right.
Yeah, good seeing you, man. Nice talking with you.
I had a great time at Middleburg as always, and hope that you enjoyed my interview with Richard Linklater as much as I did. You can check out the full transcript of the interview at Hammer to Nail. If you're curious about any of the films discussed on today's show, be sure to look for them in theaters or via streamers. You can read my reviews at Film Festival Today and Hammer to Nail. For the CineManiax podcast, I'm Chris Reed. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you at the movies.